So do you want to talk about what the Democrats are doing, or want to talk about Nikki Haley claiming that she won? Because this is
Nikki Haley.
This is the best part, right? So let's react to her victory speech after. So you listen to this victory speech and tell me who got second place and who got third place.
I can safely say tonight, Iowa made this Republican primary a two-person race.
And which two people are those?
That's it.
Tonight,
that's it. That's the tweet.
Tonight, I will be back in the great state of New Hampshire. And the question before Americans is now very clear. Do you want more of the same?
AKA her.
Or do you want a new generation of conservative leadership?
AKA Vic.
Yeah, right? Like
New generation, Ramaswamy tsunami.
Yes.
It's like whoever wrote that speech was like completely not chaining together reality, right? She got third place.
She got third place.
And then what she's really talking about is how she's actually leading in New Hampshire as she's talking in Iowa about the results of Iowa on election night. And you're just like, what is going on here? Like, what world are you living in?
Again,
here?
I think this is just a complete and utter detachment from reality, like you said, because this is the donor class candidate, right? She is courting the moneyed political elite, the well-connected. Meanwhile, on the other side, you've got what the people actually want. And the divide here could not be more obvious to me. Like I think it feels that way to anyone who's watching it at all closely.
I think the notion that she's getting support from Democrats, the Democrats are actually registering as Republicans to vote for her, and she's got backing from Reid Hoffman and like actual major Democrat donors are the ones that are propping her up. Makes a lot of sense. They would love for this to be a race between Nikki Haley and whoever is going to wind up being. If it's Biden or somebody else, they would love for it to be that because then they win either way.
Yeah, it's a win-win for them at that point.
If the Democrats are suspending democracy in all these states and they're just propping up Biden, there's a lot of money that doesn't have to be spent on Biden in the cycle. So a lot of that money can be filtered into someone like Nikki Haley, right?
Dirty games.
Yeah, it is kind of dirty. Well, and there is something interesting to be said too as well with New Hampshire is she's actually doing very well in New Hampshire. Like, I think this point spread is only 13 points between her and Trump in New Hampshire. If I
30%. That's
only
right.
13%.
Well, that's
a lot closer spread than Iowa was. Right?
Sure.
And especially given so New Hampshire is a very different state. A couple reasons. It's less religious, less white, less many things from Iowa.
Coastal.
Right? More urban.
Yeah.
It has open primaries, right? So you do have a phenomenon of Democrats and independents who will vote in the Republican primary for Haley. Right, because all the controversies in the Republicans, that's typical of open primaries, but they have a little bit different system than ours. There's a little bit more closed than ours. Ours is actually more open.
Their governor is supporting her.
Yes, they also have that.
It's also
she spent most of her resources in New Hampshire, and DeSantis spent most of his resources in Iowa.
Which, poor ROI on that investment.
Yeah.
$200 million evaporated.
Yeah, like Vivek definitely got a better ROI, and he is somewhere within the Trump campaign now. So it's it's very useful. $200 million. Whew, that's rough.
Yikes.
I think New Hampshire also is the home of the Free State Project. So a lot of, people who might be, I don't know, on the right of center or libertarian spectrum are, very much into libertarian politics in that state. I mean, I've only been there once in recent years, but there is a lot of liberty-minded people there.
How much do you think Rand Paul's Never Nikki campaign is going to have an impact on her likability within the party in general?
I like it. I mean, I think it was a good move by Rand. The way that he did it to kind of like tease us first and then drop it the next day. There's been some really funny memes popping up over it. I don't know that it's gonna change somebody, especially if it's somebody who's a Democrat who's going to vote in a Republican primary. They're not going to be influenced by Rand Paul.
Well, and Rand Paul fans and supporters are probably already in that camp, right?
Yeah.
There was a tweet, and I had commented on this from Dave Smith, where he was saying that I think Vivek Ramaswamy, Rand Paul, and Tucker Carlson have it right. the most important priority right now is destroying Nikki Haley. She cannot get the nomination. She is pure evil and represents everything wrong with our political system. If we can't agree on anything else, let's agree that she must be defeated. And I had commented on there, agreed, anyone battling over purity tests right now is not a serious person.
Almost 1 million views. It's at 750,000. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I got 18,000 on just the comment alone right there.
Yeah, and that's an interesting coalition moment. I mean, Rand Paul launched his anti-Haley, effort right before the Iowa caucus, which he got nevernikki.com, and you can go on there and you can fill out a little thing and get on a newsletter. They'll try to fundraise from you. But yeah, it's no small thing. Rand Paul's effort to do that kind of symbolizes, I think, a lot of the most COVID skeptic, most libertarian Republican group like coalescing against Nikki.
Well, and to me, this is a fight over the future of the culture of the party, which is much more important than even just this election alone. Like, we're talking the next several decades of the ideas that are coming through the vessel that is the Republican Party. And if this idea that we're very much a part of, this ethos of this culture, it spreads into the Republican Party, and that is the main thing. And you have guys like this who I think we generally agree on a lot of things with Vivek Ramaswamy, Rand Paul, Tucker Carlson, Dave Smith. If those are the ideas being spread throughout the GOP over the next several decades, we're in a pretty good place. And just when it comes to our ideas, right?
Yeah. Well,
so and
Nikki,
finally win it.
Represents basically a return to the old like George Bush neocon Republican days. And I mean,
yeah, we're purging out those types right now, right?
If that's what she means.
Go.
Like that's the question. Is like, what is she, right? So you do have the corporate press doing some apologies for her, right? And then you have I do
have the Joy Reid clip.
Oh,
if we want to, like the
we
corporate
did put that
press.
in there. Oh yeah.
Well,
let's see it.
This is them explaining why Nikki lost in Iowa.
New Hampshire.
And I think to the point that you made, Steph, I mean, it's the elephant in the room. She's still a brown lady that's got to try to win in a party that is deeply anti-immigrant and which accepts the notion that you can say immigrants are poisoning the blood of our country. She's getting, birthered by Donald Trump. And I don't care how much the donor class likes her, which will ramp up a lot, the better she does in New Hampshire. So it's still a challenge. I don't see how she becomes the nominee of that party with Donald Trump still around. I can't picture it happening. Maybe it could happen. Ron DeSantis' only argument for staying in it is he's the white guy, that he can still make the appeal to white people.
While we have
Dude, the race card is just, it's just so tired. It's just like, come on, really?
It's the only thing she's got.
Although I do love that she makes that comment while wearing Donald Trump's haircut. It's very nice of her.
Also, calling Nikki Haley a brown woman is a little bit of a stretch. I understand she's of Indian descent.
I'll be honest. I had a moment, I think earlier this year, where I had completely forgot she was Indian. And somebody was telling me, like, her first name's Nimrata. Like, her family is Indian, from India.
Yeah.
And I was just like, for years, I thought she was a white woman.
I mean,
I never even recognized it.
You see her on the street, you would never think twice about it. Yeah. Absolutely.
Like Vivek, Indian dude. You can tell, right?
100%.
But like her, I'm just like, oh yeah, she is white. Oh. Or she's not white.
To the point, though, it doesn't fucking matter at all. She is so unlikable for all the other reasons. There's nothing about the color of her skin or her heritage that has anything to do with the fact that that she would be a bad president.
Additionally, if she was saying everything that Ramaswamy was saying, these people would not be saying this about the people of Iowa.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
They would be completely different oriented.
Yes.
Now let me try to convince you guys otherwise. I have a link on a pretty good rant she did on TV. I want to try to get you guys to push you guys on like the Nikki Haley is everything that's evil. And let's just take a look at it. It's only about a minute long video. It's just to the right there of.
This.
Hold it for you, buddy.
Yeah. It's not in our
To be clear,
show flow.
I don't think she is everything that's evil, but I think she represents a political windsock.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
She's just manipulable.
Empty vessel. She can say whatever.
Totally agree. And this is her trying to actually appeal to conservatives.
Yeah.
But I will say that you've got 70% of Americans don't want to see a Trump-Biden rematch. The majority of Americans disapprove of both Trump and Biden. If you look at the fact that both Trump and Biden put us trillions of dollars in debt that our kids are never going to forgive them for, and you look at the fact that they are still focused on the past, whether it's investigations, whether it's grievances, we need a new generational conservative leader. That's what Americans want. That's what they're yearning for. They don't want to continue to deal with all the negativity and baggage of the past. They want to start seeing solutions so that we get things done on the economy, on education, on the border once and for all, on law and order, and on making sure that we prevent war. That's the biggest focus we have. That's what Granite Staters are talking about, and that's what we're going to continue.
So I think she's touching on something good, like right there, right? There is like a sense of like where everything's looking backwards, especially in the Trump versus Biden phenomena, where it's like all about, was 2016 a stolen election or was 2020? What was the right thing to do in COVID? Like who owns the unemployment during COVID or the inflation now? And all these different things are all backwards looking. And so she's touching, I think whoever is recommending that particular message is doing a good job, because I think that is an underlying spirit of our times.
I think
one of the reasons why Ramaswamy had the energy he did, it's just that people don't want, like his supporters don't want this energy, which is, you know, we're not going to get war because we're going to bomb everybody first. I don't know what her whole foreign policy point is.
I think it's incredibly disingenuous to try to say, oh yeah, Trump's campaign is backward looking, when basically her primary talking points are straight out of 2004. It's like, what?
You mean on foreign policy? Is that what you mean?
Yes, particularly.
Yeah. I think you're right. Especially because we're sensitive to foreign policy. Like the average American is not tuned into that at all, right?
Fair.
And they didn't support Ramaswamy because he had the best policy on Israel, right? They supported Ramaswamy because he was charming and on the internet, right?
Well, but he was markedly better on foreign policy than other things. And that may not have been anybody, most people's primary issue, but it was certainly a differentiator.
Well, and the culture of the GOP is shifting in that direction. Like he's capturing the directional shift that seems to be happening within a large faction of the GOP. Not the entire GOP. Like there's still a bunch of neocons that exist within there, and they're going to be dying out with the old generations, right? But the future of the party is much more Ramaswamy-ish than it is Nikki Haley at this point.
I think it's going to be like the moral majority, right? There was a period in time where if you wanted to be a Republican candidate, you had to appeal to the moral majority. You had to use those words at some point in your campaign. Now it's going to be America first. Is your Social Security policy America first? Is your trade policy America first? Like every these things going to go through American first lens.
Yeah.
And
so that
for
lens
good
is
or
going
ill.
to shift in depending on who kind of is able to control it.
What it means.
And that's why the Ramaswamy tsunami is so important, because it shifts that very important lens, which is quickly becoming, or if it probably is the moral majority within the party right now.
The other part of that, so the last part of this with Nikki is that she took that narrative where she kind of obviously says like, this is a 2-person race now because of New Hampshire. And she said she refused to participate in any further debates. Trump has said he's not going to do any debates either, so it was pretty much left to DeSantis. Is the only guy who wants to do
and DeSantis offered to debate 2 empty chairs, and then ABC is like, now we're canceling it.
Whatever like the opposite of having it is, like
DeSantis.
that's DeSantis. Yeah.
DeSantis debating 2 empty chairs.
Or just like the general charisma and being able to like control these types of the narratives around these events. Like he's just like, I'll debate 2 empty chairs and share my platform. And they're like, Even ABC is just like, I'm not sure about the ratings on that one, bud.
To be
so
fair, he
weird.
did probably win the last debate. Like when we covered it, like we said, he was his strongest showing.
Yeah,
it was.
Yeah.
It's weird to me that in a nation that pays so much lip service to democracy, that refusing to debate is a power play. Like, where is the continuity in that?
Well, democracy is a myth.
Well, obviously, it's a shibboleth.
It's a shibboleth.
Yeah,
It's just something that we all kind of bow down and being like, yes, for the good of democracy, and then we go on with our days. And
I got one.
It keeps the evil. The great are good. It's the children's story that you tell your kids to keep the boogeyman away at night. Like that's what democracy is for the public at large. But now that shibboleth is breaking down.
Do the debates really mean what they used to mean? Are they really the force that's pushing and pulling people from one camp into another camp anymore?
I mean, you look at even the way we tend to talk about it like it's performance art, not as like a persuasion art. Right.
True.
So persuasion art is we are all advocating in good faith to try to use reason to come to a consensus conclusion about the right direction of the country. If you look at like the debates between George Bush and Al Gore in 2000, they have a very different feel than the ones now, where they become less policy. They saw policy in either one, but they're less like persuasion art and more performance art. Where now it's like, how good a dunk did you get, and like, did you advance your talking points, and do your talking points rhyme? You know, like things like that that matter more now than they did in the past, although they always mattered.
Well, it's a battle again for the culture of the party. Like when the internet says Vivek Ramaswamy has basically won all of the debates, that showcases where the party is. It's not necessarily about like, did you convince people on the policy issues? It showcases where the energy is. And that's really, I think it's a signal. And that's what the debates are for. It's not necessarily like, oh, are we going to have 30% taxes or 27% taxes? It's much more about where the energy is going. And, and it shows the larger scale signal to people.
And it does get the middle, right? There are a set of population that is persuaded by debate. I mean, geez, you know, Ron Paul came up using debates, right? True. So it is a platform and it does matter. So speaking of democracy, the Democrats aren't going to have any. Ironically, they're not gonna. We did talk about all the Republican stuff. The Democrats have pretty much said, and this is something that most state codes have, as far as for their party can, if they want to, kind of short circuit the primary process and just all vote as a leadership team to say this is our candidate without having an official vote. A bunch of states have done that for the Democrats, Florida, stuff like that. But they still sent out Kamala Harris to talk to a bunch of areas and campaign states. Biden was also out doing some interviews, and we're not really doing interviews, but just doing some speaking engagements. You can find him Roomba-ing around various different rooms in in New Hampshire and South Carolina. But here's Kamala Harris trying to run cover for the Biden administration to ABC.
Ask the vice president about their campaign strategy.
Do you think Donald Trump at this point is a foregone conclusion?
I don't know, but look, if it is Donald Trump, we've beat him before and we'll beat him again. When you again look at all of the issues that are at stake, including our standing in the world, I think that the people of America want more in terms of the outcome of this election and charting the course for the future of our country.
You've been confident, your campaign has been confident. Some are concerned you all may be a little too confident. Why not go out and attack Donald Trump, go after his legal challenges?
They don't do that enough.
Well, let me just tell you something. I am of the school that you either run without an opponent or you run scared. I have learned that to be a fact, and that is the way that I feel about any election. So absolutely not. You can't take anything for granted. And we have a duty and responsibility to earn this reelect. And that's why I'm out here in South Carolina.
It's a state where the black...
See, everything is just like a cliche. There's no substance that, like, you know what I mean? Like, there's something about that doesn't feel real.
One of my favorite lines from Trump is, I remember him being asked, like, what do you think about the VP, Kamala Harris? I was like, I don't know what I think about her. She just like speaks in rhyme.
Wasn't that in his interview with Tucker?
It might have been. Yeah, I always remember that. And every time I see her, it's just like, wow, she's like Dr. Seussing it kind of with like awkward poetry.
I am always so impressed by her ability to speak so many words and say so little.
Well, you see, AI is a clever thing.
AI is kind of a fancy thing.
First off, it's two letters.
It's two letters.
Exactly. So that's the incredible moment is that the Biden administration just doesn't have anything to go on, right? They have the Middle East is blowing up. They have their response to Israel and what they've been doing with Israel has been undermining their own like fundamental demographics. There's the ABC poll or ABC News poll that put him at only 12% of the population thinks that he's like cognitively there enough to run the country. 69% say he's not, and the rest are undecided. I mean, like, they have a lot of problems. They're down in, like I said earlier, down in Georgia. It is not looking good for the Biden presidency unless something major shifts. So,
for sure. Yeah. And I'd actually, if it's all right, I'd like to dive into this write-in Joe Biden thing that popped up in New Hampshire.
Oh, yeah, right.
Because this is so weird.
It's such a crazy story.
It's
tell
so
us
weird.
about it. Yep.
So I came across this this sort of a tweet from Bruce Fenton on X here. It's a wild thing. So I'm gonna read a little bit of this, and we can pull it up on screen as well. So the first in the nation primary has been held in New Hampshire for over 110 years. Every single president, candidate, and incumbent comes here and works the streets and diners and small town halls. FDR, Truman, Calvin Coolidge, John F., Ted and Bobby Kennedy, Nixon, Reagan, Clinton, Obama, frickin' everybody, right? They all come. Now, this time it's obviously very different than all of history, because Joe Biden is not only completely incapable of campaigning, he's so far mentally gone that he can't even put up a reasonable charade. Every New Hampshire voter has done this their entire life. The average Dem primary voters are 70 years old, and many of them have voted in primaries since McGovern.
Wow.
Despite their loyalty to Team Blue, they aren't going to flush their nation down the toilet when they see up close what we all know, that Joe Biden is simply not capable of shaking hands, answering questions, working rooms, and speaking in arenas the way every other candidate has been. And he's not capable of leading our nation, and is not doing so now as we speak. Anyways, he goes on to say, tragically, the National Democrats decided to sacrifice this amazing, well-polished, century-old tradition in favor of rigging the odds for Biden. But how do you get your own party to change the rules? These are New Hampshire Democrats, keep in mind, their own party. It's not the enemy who votes in the Dem primary. How can they disenfranchise their fellow Dems? You guessed it, racism. The grift that keeps on giving. Oh, gift, not grift. Although, same Freudian slip, and I think of that, it works. Yes, the Dems actually said that New Hampshire had the wrong skin color, too many white people, and that South Carolina, where Biden did very well, is more diverse. Biden's handlers wrote a letter talking about people of color, quote unquote, as the reason for attempting to move the primary from a state he's expected to do poorly in. But then along came Robert F. Kennedy, and it looked like Biden might have a real primary. The Biden machine was afraid of RFK Jr., who could have run circles around Biden in New Hampshire. So they made it so RFK Jr. wasn't even able to set foot in New Hampshire and still be on the Dem ticket. So, of course, Kennedy left the party and went independent. Biden's handlers, to virtue signal anger at New Hampshire people being too white, removed Biden from the primary ballot. Then New Hampshire Dems fought back and decided to hold the primary anyway. First in the Nation is a part of the law in New Hampshire and has full bipartisan support. So the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, said that those delegates won't count at the national convention. The Dems plan to have 49 states instead of 50 represented at their convention. They've learned their lesson from 2016 when those pesky Democrat voters tried to interfere by voting for Bernie over the pre-selected Hillary. And Bernie might have actually beat Trump, by the way. The national Dems pressured the state Dems to ignore the primary and called it, quote unquote, meaningless in some official communications. Whoops, turns out that it's a crime for a political party to say an election is meaningless. So they ended up getting a letter from the Attorney General of New Hampshire. And now a couple of other Dems are vying for those votes, and Biden's handlers and the National Democrat machine are afraid of yet another embarrassment. So they're asking for people to write in Biden's name on this ballot. There will be 21 Democrats on the ballot in New Hampshire on Tuesday, and none of which are Joe Biden. So they're asking people to write in Joe Biden, the sitting president of the United States, for the New Hampshire primary because they whoopsie-daisied and tried to virtue signal, pulled him off, and now they need him back on for legal reasons.
Well, and the iconography of this particular, write-in campaign is, of course, the Roman salute, the communist fist. I mean,
so wild.
Yeah, and it's there. So yeah, it's what Henri's saying, and it says New Hampshire stop Donald Trump, and then on the wrist of one of the fists rising up, it's on January 13th. Write in Joe Biden. Everything is on the line. Like everything is on line to write in this current sitting president. Like that's such a weird. New Hampshire Attorney General suggests national Dems broke law by calling primary meaningless. Bunch of legal stuff. Non-white Democrats upset as Dean Phillips expected to launch challenge to Biden in New Hampshire.
So it's like
weird situation.
So they're trying so hard to not expose the fact that Joe Biden is literally incapable of campaigning that they just like worked themselves into this total quagmire where now actually we have to do this whole write-in. Like it's ridiculous how dysfunctional this is, all in an effort to rig their own primary. It's ridiculous.
Which is
so ironic.
Yeah, ironic, and then not surprising if you've been following the Democrat Party over a longer period of time.
Yeah.
When you think of what they did to Bernie Sanders, the fact that they have super delegates and these crazy systems that are like, as someone who's been through a very thorough Republican primary system, it seems to me to be much more open, much more on the up and up, much more transparent. Even though there's shenanigans, those shenanigans are like the things that you can understand, are just like part of the game, as opposed to some people just have extra votes. Or,
well, obviously, some things are just more equal, right?
With one of the most unpopular presidents of all time, that there are states whose leadership teams are so unworried about what their supporters think that they're able to just say, we're not going to have a primary now.
Well, and remember in 2016 what happened with WikiLeaks dumping Hillary Clinton's emails, and you start to see the Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who was the chairwoman of the party at the time, coordinating with the Hillary Clinton campaign to change up rules. This is the reason why Tulsi Gabbard originally left the party, because she was like the vice chair at the time. And this is also when Seth Rich got killed, mugged. Outside of the DNC, and WikiLeaks kind of giving the nod that he was their inside man that gave a bunch of information out to them. But just remember, that all happened back in 2016.